The rain had already soaked through Emily Carter's thin jacket, but she didn't bother pulling it tighter. Portland's night air was cold, sharp, and unfriendly, yet somehow it still felt warmer than the life she was walking through. Her sneakers splashed through shallow puddles as she made her way down the dimly lit street, the neon Crescent Diner sign fading behind her. The late shift always left her exhausted, but tonight felt heavier, lonelier. Emily kept her eyes on the ground, her breath shaky in the cold. People say everyone deserves love, but what if some people don't? What if some people are just too broken? A car passed by, spraying water onto her legs, but she didn't flinch. She didn't even look up. She'd become good at ignoring things: rain, noise, hurtful words, memories. Especially memories. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at it. Another message from her manager reminding her to smile more at customers. She sighed. Smile more. Funny how people think it's that easy. The streetlights flickered as she walked under them, casting brief shadows over her tired face. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks and her eyes looked as if they'd forgotten what warmth felt like. Emily crossed her arms, rubbing them for a bit of warmth, her steps slow but steady. She wasn't rushing home. There was nothing to rush toward. Just a small room, an old mattress, and silent. A soft rumble of thunder echoed somewhere far away. Sometimes I wonder if anyone would even notice if I disappeared. Her voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, Emily paused in the middle of the sidewalk. The world around her blurred into rain and greyness. People hurried past without a glance, umbrellas tilted forward, eyes fixed on their own lives. She stared at them, feeling smaller than ever. Maybe I'm not meant to be in anyone's story. But little did she know. Someone who would change everything was only a few streets away. Someone who would see her, really see her, for the first time in her life. And fate was already pulling their worlds closer. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle by the time Emily turned down Cypress Street. The lights here were warmer, softer, glowing from small cafes and old brick apartment buildings. She usually avoided this route, but tonight something pulled her towards it. Maybe exhaustion, maybe fate. As she crossed the corner, she noticed a scene unfolding on the opposite sidewalk. An elderly woman struggled with her grocery bags, one slipping from her grip and spilling oranges across the wet pavement. Before Emily could even react, a man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a grey hoodie and carrying a child's glittery pink backpack on one arm. He bent down immediately. "Ma'am, let me help you," he said gently, gathering the rolling oranges with one hand while steadying the woman with the other. Emily paused at the edge of the street, watching quietly. The man's voice was warm, calm, the opposite of everything she was used to. People shouted, brushed past her, ignored her. But this man, this stranger, acted like kindness was just a normal part of life. Next to him stood a little girl, maybe 6, with curly brown hair tied in uneven pigtails. She held a small stuffed fox in her arms, swaying impatiently. "Daddy, she's gonna fall," the girl whispered loudly. "I've got her, Lily," the man said with a soft smile. A simple name, but it warmed something in Emily's chest. As the man helped the old woman gather the rest of her groceries, Lily shifted her weight, and the stuffed fox slipped from her tiny hands. It tumbled onto the wet sidewalk and stopped right at Emily's feet. Lily gasped. "My fox!" Before she even thought about it, Emily crouched down and picked it up. The fur was damp, but still soft. She looked up and met Lily's wide, innocent eyes. Emily forced a small smile. "Here you go." She held out the toy. Lily didn't just take it. She stepped closer, then wrapped her little arms around Emily's leg in a sudden, tight hug. Emily froze. Her heart raced. Her throat tightened. No one had touched her like that in years. Without fear, without judgment, just pure affection. The man turned, noticing the moment. "Lily, sweetheart, we don't hug strangers without asking." Lily looked up at Emily, but she looked sad. Emily's breath caught. She swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "It's okay," she whispered. "Really?" The man stepped closer now, his eyes meeting Emily's. They were a deep, calming shade of brown, steady, kind, and surprisingly gentle. He gave a small nod. "Thank you for picking that up. She'd be heartbroken without her fox." Emily shrugged slightly, suddenly shy. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. It was something. Something warm, something safe. For the first time in a very long time, Emily didn't feel invisible. Michael smiled softly. "I'm Michael, by the way. And this troublemaker is Lily." Lily giggled. Emily hesitated, then quietly replied, "Emily." Michael's eyebrows lifted. Just a flicker, just enough to show he recognized the sadness she tried so hard to hide. But he didn't ask about it. He didn't pry. He simply nodded again, like her name was something important. And in that tiny moment, standing in the rain, holding a child's stuffed toy, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years, a feeling she had almost forgotten existed. Over the next few weeks, Emily found herself crossing paths with Michael and Lily more often, far more often than coincidence could explain. Sometimes she saw them outside the diner where she worked, Lily waving her tiny hands wildly until Emily waved back. Other times, she'd spot them in the small community park near her apartment, Lily zooming down the slide while Michael sat on a bench, sipping a coffee that always seemed too hot. And every time Emily walked by, Lily would sprint toward her like she'd been waiting just for that moment. One chilly afternoon, while Emily walked out of the diner after her shift, she heard a familiar little voice. "Emily!" Before she even had time to react, Lily ran up full speed and wrapped her arms around Emily's waist in a tight hug. Emily stiffened instantly. Her body locked up. Her breath caught in her throat. Affection never came without a price in her past. Touch always carried fear, strings, warnings. And yet, this little girl hugged her like it was the safest thing in the world. Michael jogged over, slightly out of breath. "Lily! Honey, you can't just grab people like that." But he stopped mid-sentence when he saw Emily's face. The way her shoulders shook, the way her hands hovered awkwardly, unsure whether to hug back or pull away. The way her eyes glistened, not with joy, but fear. He didn't say anything. He didn't ask anything. He simply crouched down beside Lily and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let's give Emily a little space, okay?" Lily looked up, confused. "But I like her." Emily swallowed hard. "It's okay," she whispered, forcing a tiny smile. "She's just sweet." Michael's eyes softened. Not pitying, not curious, just understanding. That alone made her chest ache in a way she couldn't name. Lily tugged on Emily's hand. Daddy bought hot chocolate. Do you want some? The question was so innocent, so bright, that Emily almost laughed. Michael rubbed the back of his neck. I mean, only if you're not in a rush. Emily wasn't in a rush. She never was. There was no one waiting for her, no warm home, no soft place to land, just a silent room and an old mattress. She nodded quietly. They all sat on a bench across the street, the winter air crisp around them. Michael handed her a small cup. I figured you might need something warm, he said. Emily blinked. He figured. He noticed. No one did that for her. She wrapped her cold fingers around the cup and whispered, Thank you. Michael smiled lightly. You always look like you're freezing when you leave work. Her cheeks warmed, not from the drink, but from being seen. For the first time in a long time, someone had paid attention. Not because they wanted something from her, but because they genuinely cared. Lily climbed onto the bench between them, resting her head on Emily's arm as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Emily froze again. Less fear this time, more tenderness. Something soft trying to push through the cracks she'd sealed years ago. Michael noticed her reaction, but again, he didn't question it, didn't make it awkward. He just looked at her with quiet reassurance, like saying, It's okay, take your time. Little by little, day by day, Emily's heart began to thaw. Not from grand gestures, not from dramatic moments, but from the smallest acts of kindness. A warm drink, a child's laughter, a gentle smile, a hug that wasn't demanded, but offered. Tiny pieces of safety she never knew she needed. And without realizing it, she started wanting to see them again. Maybe tomorrow, maybe every day, maybe. She wasn't meant to be alone after all. The first snowfall of the season arrived quietly, dusting the small town in soft white. Emily had always loved snow from a distance, but standing in it felt different. Too cold, too empty. Tonight, Michael and Lily were waiting outside the diner again. Lily jumped in excitement when she saw Emily step out. Look, Emily, it's snowing, it's snowing. Emily smiled, an actual real smile. I can see that. Michael gave a small wave from behind Lily, his breath fogging in the cold. We were just grabbing some groceries. Lily insisted we say hi. Lily held out a candy cane. I got 2. You can have 1. Emily hesitated, then accepted it. Thank you, sweetheart. As Lily ran ahead to make tiny footprints in the snow, Michael walked beside Emily, matching her slow pace. You okay? He asked gently. Emily nodded, but her eyes betrayed her. Something heavy sat behind them, something she'd carried far too long. Michael didn't push. He never did. He simply waited, giving her quiet space to speak or stay silent. And maybe it was the snow, or the loneliness, or the safety she felt around him. But tonight, Emily couldn't hold it in anymore. She stopped walking. Michael, she whispered, her voice shaking. Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone. He turned to her immediately, his expression softening. Of course. Emily took a deep breath, then another. Her fingers trembled as she tucked her hair behind her ear. I grew up in foster homes, she began quietly. A lot of them. I don't even remember how many. Michael didn't interrupt. He simply nodded, encouraging her to continue. I was never the kid anyone wanted. Too quiet, too emotional, too weird. She forced a small, bitter laugh. I was always either too much or not enough. Too sensitive, too shy, too broken. Michael's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, just listening, giving her the space she never had before. I moved from house to house. Every time I'd start to feel safe, they'd send me somewhere else. Her voice cracked. Every single time. Snowflakes melted on her cheeks, mixing with tears she didn't bother wiping away. No one ever hugged me, she whispered. Not like Lily does. Not like someone who cares. I didn't even know what it felt like to be held. Michael swallowed hard. His eyes softened with a quiet ache, but he still said nothing. His presence alone was enough. Emily looked down at the snow, watching her breath tremble in the cold air. And I guess after years of being told I wasn't good enough, I started believing it. Started thinking maybe I didn't deserve love at all. She finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with raw, unguarded vulnerability. I don't know how to be close to people, she admitted. I don't know how to accept kindness. Whenever someone touches me or gets too close, I panic. I don't know why. A tear slipped down her cheek. I don't want to be broken anymore. For a long, quiet moment, Michael didn't move, didn't try to fix her pain, didn't offer cliches or empty comfort. He simply stepped closer, slowly, gently, and said softly, "You're not broken, Emily." Her breath caught. "You're someone who survived things nobody should ever have to go through. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you strong." Emily stared at him, stunned. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. Not in all her years. Michael looked at her with the kind of sincerity she'd only ever seen in movies. "And you never deserved what happened to you," he added. "Not any of it." Emily's shoulders trembled. Tears fell freely now, but for the first time she didn't feel ashamed of them. Michael didn't touch her. He respected her boundaries. But he stayed close, steady, warm. Just his presence was enough. Just someone listening, really listening. Felt like healing. And in that snowy, silent moment, Emily realized something she had never believed before. Maybe her story wasn't over. Maybe she wasn't alone. Maybe there were people who could love gently, patiently, without asking anything in return. For the first time in her life, Emily felt a spark of something she had almost given up on. Hope. The night was unusually quiet. Emily's small apartment smelled faintly of coffee and old paperbacks, a mix she'd long associated with comfort she didn't quite feel. The world outside was muted, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional bark of a dog. But inside, her heart thundered loudly. Emily sat on the edge of her mattress, knees drawn close to her chest. Her hands trembled as she traced invisible patterns on the quilt, her mind replaying years of rejection, neglect, and loneliness. She tried to hold it in. She always tried. But tonight the weight became unbearable. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred. She could barely breathe. All the invisible walls she'd built around herself collapsed at once, and the raw, unfiltered ache of being unseen, unloved and unwanted came rushing to the surface. And suddenly, she was crying. No soft tears, no polite sniffles, just full, trembling sobs she couldn't stop. A knock at the door startled her. Her first instinct was to hide, to disappear. But then came a voice, a calm, familiar voice. "Emily, it's me, Michael. I wanted to check on you. You sounded upset earlier." She didn't respond at first. She couldn't. Another soft knock. "Emily, I'm not going anywhere. I want to be here if you need someone." Her voice cracked as she whispered, almost to herself, "Do you think I deserve love?" The words hung in the room like a fragile glass ornament, trembling with her vulnerability. Michael froze on the other side of the door. The cinematic silence stretched, long and heavy. Every second amplified the depth of her pain. The sounds of her quiet sobs were almost unbearable. He didn't speak immediately. He didn't try to fix it with cliches or quick reassurance. He let the weight of her questions sink in, the gravity of what she was asking, not just for comfort, but for permission to exist in someone's love. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, and deliberate. "Emily, look at me." She hesitated, lifting her tear-streaked face, her wide, fearful eyes meeting his across the dimly lit room. You absolutely deserve love," he said slowly, letting each word land, heavy with truth. "You deserve someone who sees you, who understands you, who doesn't make you feel small for feeling big things, or who doesn't make you feel like you're too much or not enough. You deserve love. The kind that doesn't ask for anything in return, the kind that stays." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't speak. She could only blink, overwhelmed by the sincerity and weight of his words. Michael stepped closer, carefully, without rushing, without crossing boundaries. His presence was calm, grounding, a harbour in the storm of her emotions. For the first time in years, Emily didn't feel alone. For the first time, someone had not only seen her pain but honoured it, held it with her, and told her it wasn't her fault. Her tears fell freely, but now they carried relief, not shame. She shook slightly, and for the first time, she felt the trembling edges of her broken heart start to knit together, thread by careful thread. And in that quiet, heart-stopping moment, she realized something she hadn't dared to hope before. Maybe she was worthy. Maybe she could be loved. The room was still, except for the soft patter of rain against the window. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, trembling, her hands buried in her lap. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as the weight of years of neglect, pain, and loneliness pressed down on her. Michael took a careful step closer. He didn't rush. He didn't speak over her. He simply looked at her, really looked, with a kind of gentleness she had never experienced. Then, slowly, deliberately, he knelt down in front of her. The movement wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, grounding, deliberate. He lowered himself to her level, eyes meeting hers with a calm, unwavering patience. "Emily," he began, his voice soft but certain. "Everyone deserves love." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but years of being told she wasn't enough made her doubt every word. Michael leaned in slightly, giving her the space to breathe, to feel, to process. "But you?" He paused. His eyes never left hers. You deserve the kind that stays. The words were simple, yet they struck with an intensity that left her gasping. The kind that stays. It wasn't pity. It wasn't a casual comfort. It was a promise, a recognition of everything she had endured, and a vow that she could exist fully, vulnerably, without fear of rejection. Emily's body finally gave in. She sobbed, big, shaking, unstoppable tears. But they weren't tears of despair this time. They were tears of relief. Tears of finally being seen. Tears of finally being allowed to believe that love wasn't just a fantasy for someone like her. Michael stayed kneeling, silent, steady. He didn't try to stop her. He didn't rush her. He simply let her feel it all, the grief, the exhaustion, the release. And in that moment, Emily felt something shift deep inside her. The heaviness that had clung to her for years began to lift, replaced by a fragile, glowing sense of safety. For the first time in a long time, she let herself hope. She didn't need to fix herself. She didn't need to earn this kindness. She didn't need to hide her tears or her fears. She just could be. Michael reached out slowly and Emily leaned forward, resting her forehead gently against his shoulder. Not out of dependence, but as a quiet acknowledgement that, for the first time, someone cared enough to stay.